Hi all, in this activity we are going to see how we are going to configure Hibernate framework to save some data to the database. So here we are going to implement a small web application. So this is the application we used in several activities now. We are going to use this application and then we are going to use Hibernate framework to save this data to the database. So we discussed that Hibernate is an ORM framework. The ORM means object relational mapping. So we are going to map the objects into relational database management databases. Okay, and then the objects which are there in our Java program will be saved to the database. This mapping part is actually handling by the Hibernate framework. So let's see how we are going to configure this framework and how we are going to use this framework to save this data to the database. So first I need to create this database. So I will create this database first. I copy and I will create a database called activity1, and inside that I am going to create this table. Okay, now I'm having the table. So now I will go to the NetBeans, and here our application is a web application. So therefore I'm going to create a new project by selecting Java web application and move to the next, and here we will name it as activity1, and we can move to next now. And from here, so our graphs service there, so we'll move to next. And from this interface you can see the frameworks. From here we are going to select this Hibernate 4.3.1. okay, and now we need to select our database connection, but I didn't connect it through the NetBeans. Sorry for that. I will cancel this wizard and I will go to the service tab, and I'm going to connect this one first. So first I will open this. Okay, I can't see it here, so I will refresh. Okay, now I can see it, so I'm going to connect this one. Okay, now you can see I create the connection. I'm having this user table like this. So now I will go to the wizard again, and here I will use activity1 as the name. Go to next, and from here I'm going to select the Hibernate framework. Now the activity1, the URL, the database URL is here, so I'm going to select that one, and once I select it, the NetBeans will automatically select the correct dialect I need to use here. Then I will click finish. So once I click finish, so you can see that the NetBeans is going to create the Hibernate configuration file for me. So if this is not automatically creating, so then you need to click on this add button, and you need to add these properties with values into here under JDB's properties. And also we are having another required property under this configuration properties tab as well. So here the Hibernate dialect, if that is not adding automatically, so then you need to click on this add, and you need to add add that property into this configuration file. Okay, so mainly we need to have these configurations: the dialect, connection, what is the driver class, and then you need to tell the URL, username. So those are required properties. Other than that, we discussed that we can have some other optional properties like Hibernate showed SQL and Hibernate format SQL. and from the miscellaneous properties, so we can add the query factory class. So here I told that we are having two classes, classic one and HT query translator. So I'm going to use this HT query one here, and I'm going to click OK. So then I can save it. Once I create this Hibernate configuration file, so the next step will be the creating the reverse engineering file. So I told you that with the new reverse engineering file, so we are going to have some XML mappings about our database. So what are the what is our database and what are the tables available there. So we are going to create that structure, so by XML structure, by using this reverse engineering. So I can go to this source package, and then you can right click and you can go to new other, and from here you can select the Hibernate, and then you can see we are having a Hibernate reverse engineering wizard here. I'm going to select that one, then I can go next, and from here I can go next again, and then you can see the NetBeans is going to display what are the available tables in my database. You can select this table and you can add this table into this selected table column. So then you can click finish. So then the Hibernate reverse engineering XML file will be created like this. So in this one you can see it's having the information about what is the name of my database and also what are the tables available in that database. So that information is available in this Hibernate reverse engineering one. So now I created this reverse engineering one and also the configuration file. After creating this Hibernate reverse engineering file, so then I can create the POJO classes. So that means entity classes for my database tables. Okay, so the entity class means Java class. So normally it's a POJO class, so that that is having a relationship so with the database table. So in here you can see that if you can design your database, or if you can create your database correctly, so then you can create these classes automatically through this NetBeans wizard. So now I'm going to create that entity class. So here you can go to new and then go to other, and here you can select Hibernate, and from here you can select this Hibernate mapping files and POJOs from database, that option. So then you can go next, and here you can give a package name. So we will give the package name as app.entity, because this is an entity class. So I'm giving the package name like this. So then I can click finish. Once I click finish, so now you can see, so we are going to create our POJO class here. So this is actually Java Bean class. So we discussed about this Java Bean classes. So when you are going to create a Java Bean class, you know that we need to have a default constructor with no arguments. So this is that, and also we need to have private properties. So these are private properties, and also we need to have getters and setters for each of these properties. You can see those are here, and then we need to use, so that means we need to implement this class by using serializable interface. So here you can see this class is implemented by using this serializable interface. So that means this is a Java Bean class. So the Java Bean is actually coming under POJO classes. Okay, so this Hibernate framework is actually created a Java Bean class for our database table called user. Now let's see how we are going to use this framework. So now we configured this framework. So now we will see how we are going to use this framework to save some data to the database. So let's first go to our database. So this is the database. So if I run this view data, you can see we don't have any data in our database. So now I'm going to create this application. So this is the application that we are going to use in this activity. So small HTML form, and I'm going to create that form here. So I will use the table structure to add this content in a clear way. Okay, like this I design my interface. So we will run and see. Okay, this is my form. Okay, now I'm going to create a servlet called register to save this data. So I'm going to source package and I'm going to select servlet, and I'm giving name as register. Package will be app.servlet. Then I'm going next, and I need to add this information to the web.xml file. You know what is web.xml file? It's having the mapping about the URL patterns and the servlet. So once the user requests a URL pattern from the server, so then it will map what is the relevant servlet that should handle this request. Okay, so we are going to add this information to the web.xml file. So this is telling that if you are having the URL pattern like this, so then we need to call to this servlet register. And now I'm going to click finish. Now I will use Hibernate framework to save this data. So here, so when we are using the Hibernate framework, so you know that first thing is we need to have a session. The session means a connection between application and the database. So we need to have a session. Through the session, we are going to do all the things. So therefore, first we need to create a session here. So when you are going to create a session object, so I told you that we can use the session factory as the interface. But in this NetBean interface, NetBean IDE, so we are having an easy method to implement this session factory. So we can go to this new and other, and from here we can select Hibernate. So here you can select this Hibernate util.java option file type. So it's telling that it's retrieving a Hibernate session objects. Okay, so this will enable easy retrieval of Hibernate session objects. So we can use this class to get session objects easily. So I'm going to configure that one now. I will give the name as Hibernate util here, and I will add it into a package app.util, and then I'm going to click finish. So now this will return a session factory. So I can use this now. So first I need to add this org hibernate.session class into my working file. Okay, now I'm going to use this Hibernate util, and I'm going to get the session factory. So then I will get a session object. Now I need to open this session. Once I got it, I need to open this session. So now I'm having a open session. So after that, I'm going to create a transaction here. So transaction means a single atomic unit of work. So that means we are going to do a work by using a transaction. So once the session is created, we are going to create a transaction. We can have many transactions within a session. Okay, so but to create a transaction, we need to have a session. The session means what? The connection between it's a kind of a connection between the database and also the application. Via this session, we are going to create this transaction. Okay, so now I will create this transaction. I will name it as tr. So I need to import this class as well, hibernate.transaction. Then I'm going to use the session object, and I'm going to start or begin a transaction here. Okay, now I'm having the transaction. So now first I'm going to create the object, which object I need to save. So that is what I'm going to create now. So I'm going to use the user class here, and I'm going to create a new user object. So let's import this one. Now I'm going to set values to this object. So I can set the first name, so I can get it from the request, and I can access this get parameter method, and I can pass the string. So that means the name of this parameter. So that is first name. Okay. Likewise, I can get the other ones as well. So I will set the last name, and I will set the username, and I will set the password. So this should be password, this should be username, this should be last name. Okay, like this now I have set the values to this object. So now I created this object. I told you that in Hibernate lifecycle, so we are having 4 stages, mainly 3, and we are having a state called removed state as well. So now this is in the first stage. Okay, so now we created the object. So therefore now the object is in the first state. Now we need to take this first state object into persistent, or the second state. The second state is the persistent state. So we need to take this object into that level. So how we are going to do it? We discussed that we are having several methods. We can call to these methods. Then this object will be coming into this persistent state. So here I am going to use the save method. So I need to use the session, and I need to use save method, and I am going to pass this object. So now once I call to this method, so now the object is in the persistent state. Okay, the second state. Now actually this Hibernate is going to create this object in the database. So now if you are doing any changes to this object, now those changes will be applied to the database site as well. So once I save this one, so then I need to commit my work. So that means I'm doing a work means a transaction here. Now I need to commit my transaction. Once I do the work, so then I need to commit it. Okay, so here the work means a single work we are calling as a transaction. So now we need to commit this transaction. So now I committed it. Now I'm going to display a message to the user. So I'm telling that registration is successful. Okay, now I will run this project. So let's go to the database first. So you can see in this table we don't have any data, and I'm going to add some data now, and I'm going to click on this register. Okay, you can see the registration is successful. Now you can go to the database and you can see whether our data is saved or not. You can see our data is there. So that means we saved it correctly. Now in this case you can see we are actually going to use the Hibernate framework. Hibernate is a ORM framework. ORM means Object Relational Mapping. So here you can see that we are not using any SQL query here. We are just creating the object and we are asking framework to save that object to the database. So we are not dealing with any SQL queries here. So that is why I told that if you are going to use this Hibernate kind of frameworks, ORM frameworks, so we are actually hiding the SQL queries through object-oriented logics. So here you can see we created an object only. We don't have anything like SQL query here to save data to the database, but we created object and we are telling to the, so through this we are telling to the Hibernate to make this as a persistent object. The meaning of persistent means we are going to store it for longer period or permanently. So that is what the persistent means. Once we are telling to the Hibernate to make this object persistent, so this is where we are telling it, make this object persistent, because once we call to this method, it will comes to the persistent, it will treat as a persistent object. So then the Hibernate is going to save this object or these values in the database. So that is how it's happening. So now you can see how we can save the objects using this Hibernate framework. So now we are not working with the SQL queries. We are now going with this double OP concept, creating object and saving objects to the database. So we are getting the support of ORM framework when we are doing this thing. So then I will show another interesting thing to you. So here think that you don't have this table. Okay, so I'm going to delete this table now. So I will go here and now I'm going to this one and I'm going to drop this table. Okay, so now think that you don't have this table. Okay, so if you don't have this table in the normal environment, I mean in normal way, if you are going to run this application, so then this application will throw an error to you by telling that the user table is not exist. Okay, so that SQL exception will be thrown from the database side. Okay, so that means the application is going to throw that exception, SQL exception. But when you are discussing about the Hibernate, I told you that we can create tables automatically by using this framework. If you don't have this table, so then we can ask Hibernate to create this table and then add these data to the database. But Hibernate is not a magician. So that means, the framework cannot do all the things by itself. We need to tell to the framework what to do. Okay, so here if you are asking framework to create the table, so then we need to have the mapping of these tables as well. Okay, so here you can see we are having the mapping of the table. So this is the mapping of the table. So now since we are having it, so we can ask framework to create this table for us. So this is how we are doing it. We can go to this Hibernate configuration file, and from here we can select Hibernate to DDL auto option. So this is the property. We can select this property, and then we can have several values here. So we can use the value as create. So then once you save it, and we can build it again. Okay, now we are going to run this project again. So now in this case you can see that here under this activity 1 we don't have any tables. So now I'm going to run this project again. Okay, now you can see we got the message registration is successful. Okay, so we didn't get any exceptions. So now we will go to the database side and we will see what happened. Okay, you can see the user table is automatically created. We didn't create it, Hibernate is automatically created. We will go inside of this table. So here you can see the data is added to the table. Okay, so that means we didn't have a table, but we executed our application. Once we are executing our application, the Hibernate is actually created it, because we told the Hibernate, we asked Hibernate to create it. Okay, so then the Hibernate created this table and then added this information to the table. Okay, so you can see our information is there. So that is how this Hibernate is supporting to create tables automatically. So that is one benefit we discussed under this Hibernate benefits. Okay, so or the ORM benefits. Okay, so that's it about this activity. So here we saved this data by using this Hibernate framework. So you also can try this one, and you also can see how this Hibernate framework is going to use. Thank you.